The moment Diana Montgomery laid eyes on the necklace, everything stopped. It was just a dinner, just another evening in their posh Upper East Side apartment. But the moment the pendant caught her gaze, her world shifted. Her fingers froze around her glass of wine, her lips parted, but no words came. The gold crescent moon, delicate and beautiful, hung from Jada's neck, carrying with it a weight Diana had not prepared for. Alex, her son, grinned beside Jada, oblivious to the storm stirring within his mother. "Mom, Dad," Alex began, his voice full of pride, "this is Jada. The girl I've been telling you about." Diana barely nodded, her eyes glued to the pendant as if it had drawn her in. She knew that symbol. She knew it. The faint engraving of the letter L beneath the crescent moon. It was a design she had seen only once before, on a necklace she had given up long ago, a symbol of a decision she could never erase. Alex continued, his voice now a little softer, "She's amazing, Mom. She works with kids in a shelter. Coding, robotics. You'd love her, I swear." Diana's hand trembled slightly as she set her wine glass down, the delicate crystal chiming softly as it touched the table. She hadn't heard a word of what Alex said. All she could focus on was that necklace. "Where did you get it?" Diana asked, her voice sharp despite herself, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Jada, looking somewhat confused, glanced down at the necklace, her fingers brushing it lightly. "Oh," she said with a soft, almost nervous smile. "It's just something I've had. I don't know where it came from, honestly. I was found with it when I was a baby." Diana's heart skipped. "Found?" Alex's voice cracked through the tension. "She grew up in foster care," he added, his words rushed. "No family, no background really. But she's really smart. She's applying to Columbia." Diana nodded slowly, the clinking of silverware in the background almost too loud in her ears. She needed air. She needed to be anywhere but here, staring at the necklace she thought she'd buried in her past. The past she thought she'd locked away forever. She stood abruptly. "Excuse me," she muttered, the words tasting foreign in her mouth. Her legs felt unsteady as she turned and walked out of the room. She needed to breathe, to think. As the door clicked shut behind her, Diana leaned against the wall, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. That necklace. She could barely hear the voices coming from the dining room anymore. All she could hear was the rush of her own thoughts. No, it can't be. It can't be her. She reached beneath her blouse, her fingers trembling as they found the familiar weight hanging from her neck. The same necklace. The one she had hidden away. The one she had given up. It wasn't supposed to be here. It wasn't supposed to exist. She had told herself it was a memory she could erase, but it wasn't gone. It had never been gone. Her mind raced as she quickly unlocked the drawer beside her vanity, her eyes scanning the cluttered contents. Beneath layers of jewelry, beneath pearls and diamonds, she found what she was looking for. Her fingers closed around it, soft, cold metal. The same crescent moon, the same initial. The same damn necklace. Her pulse quickened. She couldn't breathe. She stumbled back, her head spinning. She needed answers, but what answers could there possibly be? How could this be happening? Jada had to be connected. She couldn't just be some random girl Alex was dating. This was too much of a coincidence. This necklace, this piece of her history, was not meant to resurface. Downstairs, Jada laughed nervously, completely unaware of the storm brewing upstairs. Alex kept talking, telling his parents more about Jada's work, but Diana didn't hear him. She couldn't. "Mom, are you all right?" Alex's voice pierced through the haze of panic and confusion. Diana stood frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, gripping the counter with both hands. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and shaken. She didn't know how long she had been standing there. It can't be. She took a deep breath. It can't be her. But it was. It was starting to feel like a cruel joke. And if it wasn't a joke, what was it? What had she done all those years ago? Diana shook her head, taking another breath. She could feel her hands shaking. Her heart pounded like a drum in her ears. She couldn't stop herself. She had to know. And she knew exactly where to start. The dinner party had ended with an odd, almost suffocating silence. Diana barely spoke after her abrupt exit, her mind too clouded with a storm of thoughts to join in the usual small talk. Alex and Jada had said their goodbyes without much fanfare, but Diana didn't remember any of it. She was in a daze, the weight of the necklace still heavy on her chest. As soon as the door closed behind Alex and Jada, Diana sank into the nearest chair, staring at her hands, trembling despite herself. This is impossible. She wanted to convince herself that it was a mistake, a coincidence, but her instincts told her otherwise. The necklace was not just a trinket. It was a reminder of a past she had worked so hard to bury. She had spent so many years pretending that chapter of her life had never happened. That decision, that mistake, was a secret that only she and a few others knew. But now, standing in the shadows of her own home, it felt like that past was clawing its way back into her life. "Mom." Alex's voice came from down the hall, sounding tentative. "Are you okay?" Diana quickly wiped a tear away before it could fall. She hadn't realized she was crying until now. She swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. "I'm fine, Alex," she said, her voice betraying none of the turmoil churning inside her. "I just needed a moment." Alex knocked lightly on the door before pushing it open. "It's not like you to get so flustered. What happened with Jada?" Diana forced a smile, but it was brittle, and she knew he could see through it. "I just need to think, okay? It's nothing. I'll be downstairs in a minute." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But I don't want you to shut me out, Mom." "I won't," she lied. The last thing she wanted was for Alex to know the truth, about her past or Jada's connection to it. Not yet. She needed more time to figure it out, to understand what was happening before she said anything. Once Alex left, Diana was alone again. She sat in the silence, the cold weight of the necklace still around her neck. The longer she thought about it, the more her heart raced. The idea that Jada could be the daughter she had given up, the daughter she never stopped thinking about, was too much to process. She couldn't let it be true. But what if it is? She pushed the thought away. She couldn't let herself go down that rabbit hole. Not yet. The next morning, Diana found herself staring at the mirror, feeling detached from her reflection. The woman in the glass wasn't the same one she had seen just days ago. The burden of her secret was heavier now, and she couldn't avoid it any longer. She needed answers. And the only way to get them was to confront Jada. Diana spent the entire morning pacing. Her mind raced, and she couldn't focus on anything. The necklace was like a magnet, pulling at her, reminding her of everything she had buried for so long. But she needed to be sure. She couldn't let herself jump to conclusions. She had to confirm it was Jada. She dialed the number for a private investigator, someone she had used in the past for discreet matters. "I need your help," she said when the investigator answered, her voice tight with resolve. "I need to find out everything you can about a girl named Jada Carson." "Do you know her?" "No, you don't need to contact her. Just gather everything you can. Fast." The investigator agreed without hesitation, and Diana hung up. She wasn't going to wait. She had waited long enough. Hours passed in a blur, and just as the sun began to dip low in the sky, the investigator called. "I've got the information you asked for. It's not much, but it's enough to raise some questions." Diana's pulse quickened. "What did you find?" The investigator hesitated before replying. She was placed into foster care at the age of 2. No record of biological parents. The only thing she has is the name of the shelter where she was found, Lincoln Shelter in Chicago. And, well, there was a note. A cryptic one. A woman dropped her off with a necklace, and all it said was, "She's safer without me." Diana's heart dropped. The same words, the same familiarity. It was her. The note. The necklace. It all fit together. "Is there any way to get more details?" Diana asked, her voice steadier now, though her hands were trembling. "Do you have anything else?" "I'll dig deeper, but this is all I have for now. I'll let you know if I find anything else." Diana thanked him quickly, then hung up the phone. Her head was spinning. She had always known that one day the past would catch up with her, but this was something she had never prepared for. She stared at the wall, her mind reeling. Jada, a girl she had only just met, her daughter. Diana closed her eyes, the weight of the truth pressing in on her chest. The next step was inevitable. She had to talk to Jada. But how? What could she possibly say? She didn't know how to begin. The following evening, Diana found herself in her study, staring out of the window, lost in thought. The city lights twinkled below, but they offered no comfort. She was beyond comfort now. All she could think about was the truth, the one that had been waiting for her for so long. She couldn't avoid it any longer. When Alex mentioned that Jada was coming over the next day, Diana knew it was time. She couldn't let her past slip through her fingers again. She had to face it. When Jada arrived, Diana had already made up her mind. She couldn't hold back anymore. She had to know if it was really her. "Jada, can I talk to you for a moment?" Diana asked, her voice steady but with an underlying tremor. Jada nodded and followed her into the living room. Diana sat down, taking a deep breath. This was it. "I need to ask you something personal. And I understand if it's uncomfortable, but I need you to be honest with me. What do you know about your past? About your birth parents?" Jada looked taken aback by the sudden question, but she didn't back down. "I know I was left in a shelter in Chicago. I never found my birth parents. Just one letter, and that necklace." Her fingers instinctively touched the pendant, and Diana's heart skipped a beat. "Do you remember anything about that woman?" Diana pressed, her voice tight. Jada hesitated, her expression turning serious. "I remember, a woman. I don't know why, but I've always felt like she was important. I've always wondered about her. Why she left me." Diana's mind raced. Could this be it? She stood up abruptly, her breath shallow. "Jada, that woman, she could have been someone from my past. And that necklace. It's not just any necklace. It's mine. And I think it's yours too." Jada looked confused. "What do you mean?" Diana's heart pounded. She had to tell her. "It's possible that I'm your mother." Jada stared at her in disbelief, taking a step back. "No. That's impossible." But the truth was out now. There was no turning back. Jada sat down slowly, her face pale, the shock evident in her eyes. Diana could see the wheels turning in her mind, the disbelief battling with the reality of what Diana had just said. "You're my mother," Jada whispered, her voice shaky. Diana nodded, her throat tight. "I gave you up. I had to. And I've regretted it every day. I never wanted to forget you, but I didn't have a choice." Jada stood up abruptly, the shock still evident on her face. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you look for me?" "I didn't think you'd ever want to know," Diana said softly. "I thought you'd be better off without me. But I've never stopped thinking about you. Not for one day." The silence stretched on, both women lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Jada spoke again. "What do we do now?" Diana reached for her, her voice filled with emotion. "We figure it out. Together. Whatever comes next, we do it as mother and daughter. Jada's eyes softened, the anger and confusion giving way to something else, something deeper. Maybe, just maybe, they could start over. But only time would tell. Diana sat back in her chair, her hands trembling as she watched Jada process the revelation. The words had barely left her mouth, but the weight of them seemed to hang in the air, suffocating the space between them. She had never imagined this moment, never thought she would be telling a young woman, who was practically a stranger, that she was her mother. Jada, on the other hand, stood frozen, staring at Diana with wide eyes. She didn't seem to know what to do next, and Diana couldn't blame her. How could anyone possibly react to something like this? To find out that the woman standing before you, the one you had just met a few hours ago, was someone who had once held you in her arms, only to abandon you years ago. I don't know what to say, Jada finally whispered, her voice almost hollow. Diana swallowed hard, her own emotions threatening to spill over. You don't have to say anything yet. I didn't expect this to be easy. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know that I've thought about you every single day. And I'm here now. I can't change the past, but I want to be here for you, if you'll let me. Jada shook her head slowly. Why now? Why tell me all of this after all these years? Why didn't you look for me? Why didn't you? Diana felt her chest tighten. The words were cutting, but they were deserved. She had no right to expect forgiveness, no right to ask for anything, not after the way she had walked away. I couldn't. I was too afraid, Diana confessed. I was afraid of what it would mean. I was young, and my family, they didn't support me. They threatened to disown me. I made a choice I thought was best at the time. And I lived with that decision every day. Jada was silent for a long time. Diana couldn't bear to look at her, but she couldn't look away either. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, Jada spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. You didn't think I'd want to know. You didn't think I'd want you in my life. Diana's heart broke as she met Jada's eyes. I didn't know how you'd feel about me. I didn't know if I'd be too much of a stranger. I didn't want to intrude on your life. I didn't think you'd forgive me. Jada's gaze softened slightly. You don't get to decide that for me, she said, her voice stronger now. You don't get to decide what I want or don't want. Diana could feel her chest constrict with guilt, but at the same time, a tiny glimmer of hope sparked in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of everything. Jada took a step back, running a hand through her hair. I need time, she said quietly, her face unreadable. I need time to process this. Diana nodded, though her heart ached. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Whenever you're ready. Jada didn't respond. She just turned and left, disappearing out the door, leaving Diana alone with her thoughts. Over the next few days, Diana's thoughts were consumed with Jada. Every moment, every minute felt like it carried a weight that she couldn't shake. She replayed every moment, every word, and every gesture, wondering if she had said the right thing or if she had pushed Jada too hard. It was only after Jada left that Diana decided to take the next step. She couldn't live with uncertainty anymore. She needed answers, for both of them. She needed to know, was Jada really her daughter? Diana made the call. The DNA test had been scheduled for the next morning. The waiting was excruciating. Diana spent every moment pacing, trying to find something to occupy her mind, but nothing seemed to work. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jada, her face, her smile, the necklace, everything felt connected, and yet so distant. When the test results finally came in, Diana opened the email with shaking hands. She read the words quickly, almost afraid to believe them, but they were undeniable. There it was, in black and white. 99.9% probability of a direct maternal relationship. Diana sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the sheer reality of what the results meant. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. She had spent so many years trying to move on from this part of her life, only for it to come crashing back in the most unexpected way. She stared at the screen for a long time, reading the confirmation over and over again. It felt surreal. After everything, after all the time spent apart, Jada was her daughter. There was no denying it now. Her heart was pounding in her chest. This is real. The following days felt like a blur, each one passing too quickly for Diana to process. She gave Jada space, just as she had promised. The phone calls and messages had gone unanswered, and Diana knew that pushing would only make things worse. She was used to controlling everything in her life, but this was different. This wasn't a business deal. This wasn't a meeting. This was a relationship that had been broken, and she couldn't just fix it with money or influence. Jada needed to decide if she wanted this, if she wanted Diana in her life. Diana had to respect that. It wasn't until the third day that Diana received a call from Jada. Diana's heart leaped when she saw the name on the screen. Jada? Diana answered, her voice trembling slightly. I've been thinking, Jada said, her tone still guarded. A lot. And I don't know where to start. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel or think. But I can't deny the truth. You're my mother, and that's something I can't just ignore. Diana exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. I know it's a lot to take in, but I'm here. I'm ready to take whatever you can give me. There was a long pause before Jada spoke again, softer this time. I'm scared. I don't know how to do this. I've spent my whole life without you. And now, you're here. What am I supposed to do with that? Diana felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. We take it one step at a time. We start slow. I know I can't undo the past, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Jada didn't respond immediately, but Diana could hear the faint sound of a sigh on the other end of the line. Finally, Jada spoke again, her voice hesitant but open. Okay. One step at a time. A week later, Diana and Jada met at a cafe in the city. It was a neutral space, one that wasn't too personal but still felt intimate enough for them to talk without the weight of their past pressing down on them. Diana had waited for Jada to make the first move, but as they sat down across from each other, Diana realized that it was her turn to open up. I know I've messed up. I can never change that, Diana began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. But I want to try. I want to be in your life, if you'll let me. Jada looked at her for a long moment, her eyes searching Diana's face. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to get to know you. Diana's heart swelled with hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. And that was all she could ask for. They spent the next few hours talking, about their lives, their experiences, their hopes for the future. It was slow and cautious, but it was a beginning. A real beginning. And for the first time in years, Diana felt like she had a second chance. The following weeks felt like a fragile truce, as both Diana and Jada cautiously tested the waters of their newfound relationship. Diana couldn't help but feel like she was walking on eggshells, not wanting to push too hard but also desperate to bridge the gap that had been created by years of silence. Every conversation, every meeting, felt like a step forward, but it also felt like two people trying to rebuild something from the ashes. They started with small things, lunches in the city, phone calls, texts that slowly began to feel less formal. Diana would ask about Jada's work with kids, her interests, the things she loved to do. And Jada would occasionally share stories of her foster care years, the ones that hadn't been as dark as she'd once believed. The laughter they shared over casual stories of bad dates or awkward moments at work was a strange but comforting beginning. But even with these lighter moments, Diana still felt the weight of her guilt. She had abandoned Jada. She had chosen a path that left her daughter to grow up alone, without the guidance of a mother. Diana didn't expect to erase the past, but she couldn't help but feel like she owed Jada more than just time. She owed her the chance to have a real relationship. One evening, after dinner at a cozy restaurant in Brooklyn, they sat across from each other at a small table, both quieter than usual. Diana took a deep breath, ready to dive into the conversation that had been lurking between them for weeks. "Jada," she began softly, "I know we've been talking a lot about the present and the future, but I need to ask you something about the past." Jada didn't look up at first, but Diana could tell she was listening closely. Finally, Jada looked at her, her expression guarded but open. "What do you want to know? Why didn't you ever try to find me?" Diana's voice caught in her throat. "I always thought. I thought you'd be angry with me. Or that you didn't want to know who I was. But why didn't you try to reach out?" Jada leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing slightly. She took a long pause before responding. "I don't know. I guess I always wondered, but there was something in me that just accepted it, you know. I never really thought that someone like you would want anything to do with someone like me." Diana felt a pang of shame, but she nodded. "I understand. I know I made a choice that affected your life in ways I can't even imagine. I don't think I would have known what to do with you if I'd found you," Jada continued. "I had all these stories in my head about why you left me. I didn't know if you were happy or if I'd just be a reminder of a life you didn't want." Diana reached across the table, taking Jada's hand gently. "I don't want to be a reminder of pain. I want to be someone who can make things better, if you'll let me." Jada squeezed her hand. The tension in her face seemed to soften. "I'm not sure what this looks like, Diana. But I'm willing to try. I think you're worth the effort." It wasn't a full embrace of forgiveness, but it was a step towards something real. Just as things began to feel like they were moving in the right direction, a storm of doubt came crashing into their fragile peace. It started with a phone call Diana never expected. The voice on the other end was familiar, but hearing it brought back a flood of memories Diana had pushed to the deepest parts of her mind. "Diana," the voice said, sharp and filled with authority. "We need to talk." It was her mother. Diana froze, feeling a rush of emotions. Her mother's voice still carried the same tone it had all those years ago, cold, demanding, and always full of judgment. The conversation that followed was one Diana never wanted to have. "I know you've been seeing her," her mother continued. "And I don't think you should. She's not part of our world, Diana. She's a stranger to us." Diana could hear the disdain in her mother's voice, and it made her stomach turn. "Mom, she's my daughter," Diana said, her voice barely above a whisper, but strong enough to make a statement. "Your daughter?" Her mother laughed, but it wasn't a sound of amusement. "You don't owe her anything. You made your choice all those years ago, and now you want to bring that mess into our family?" Diana's heart ached, but she wasn't about to back down. "I don't need your approval. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. And I'm not asking for your permission." There was a long silence on the other end, the weight of the past hanging thick between them. Finally, her mother spoke again, quieter this time. "Don't come crying to me when this falls apart. You'll regret this. Just like you regretted everything else you've done." The words stung, but Diana didn't let them show. "I'm not afraid of what's coming. And I'm not going to let you scare me away from what I know is right." She hung up before her mother could say anything more, her hands shaking. She had been prepared for the anger, the disapproval, but hearing it again, after all these years, still hurt more than she could admit. Jada was there when Diana walked back into the living room, the tension obvious in her expression. "What's going on?" she asked gently, but Diana could see the worry in her eyes. Diana sat down, rubbing her temples. "That was my mother. She doesn't think I should be doing this. She doesn't think I should try to be a part of your life." Jada frowned but didn't say anything. Diana could see the wheels turning in her mind. After a moment, Jada spoke, her voice calm but determined. Your mother's not the one who gets to decide who you have in your life, Diana. You do. Diana nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek before she could stop it. I know. But it's not that simple. She has a way of making me doubt myself, of making me feel like I'm doing everything wrong. You don't need her approval, Jada said firmly. I think you're doing the right thing. And I'm here. We're doing this together. For the first time in what felt like forever, Diana felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, hope. Maybe this wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, she believed it might be worth it. The storm between Diana and her mother wasn't over, but Diana was determined not to let it pull her away from Jada. The relationship between them, fragile as it was, needed time and patience to grow. Both women were still finding their footing in what was an entirely new dynamic. Weeks passed, and they both worked through the discomforts, the awkwardness, and the unspoken tensions. Jada started calling Diana Mom, though it felt foreign at first. Diana tried not to hold her breath every time she said it, but it felt real. With each small step they took toward one another, the bond between them strengthened, though it was still tender. One day, Diana and Jada sat on the balcony of Diana's apartment, the sun setting over the city. They had just finished a quiet dinner together, and there was a calm between them that neither had expected to feel so soon. You know, Jada said, breaking the silence, it's weird. I never thought I'd actually have a relationship with you. I always imagined it would be some fantasy, you know. But this? This feels real. Diana smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. Yeah. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to have this either. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're giving us a chance. Jada leaned back in her chair, staring at the skyline. It's gonna take time, right? I'm not sure I can trust everything just yet. But I'm willing to try. Me too, Diana said, a soft laugh escaping her. I think we can do this, one step at a time. And as they sat together in the fading light, both women knew there was still a long road ahead. But for the first time, it didn't feel like they were walking it alone. It had been a few months since Diana and Jada began their tentative steps toward a new relationship, but it wasn't without its complications. As much as they had progressed, there were still moments where the weight of the past pulled them both down. Jada had her moments of doubt, and Diana, despite all her efforts, wasn't immune to the lingering guilt and uncertainty. One afternoon, as they sat together in Diana's apartment, the air between them was heavy. Jada was staring out the window, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Diana could tell something was bothering her. You okay? Diana asked, her voice soft, trying not to push but concerned nonetheless. Jada sighed deeply, running her fingers through her hair. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to fit into a life that doesn't feel like mine. It's hard, Diana. This whole thing, it's a lot. Diana nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. She knew that Jada's whole world had been turned upside down, just like hers had been. For years, they had been living parallel lives, unaware of each other, and now they were both trying to bridge the gap that time had created. I get it, Diana said quietly. I know this isn't easy. It's hard for me too. It's been so long, and I feel like I've missed so much. But I want you to know, Jada, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Jada didn't respond right away. She just stared at the skyline, as if trying to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice tinged with uncertainty. It's not about you being here, Diana. It's about me trying to figure out who I am now. And sometimes, I wonder if I even know who you are. I mean, you're my mom, but I didn't grow up with you. All I have are stories from strangers, stories I don't even know if I should believe. Diana's heart ached, and she reached out, gently touching Jada's hand. I know it's not the same as if I had been there all along. But the truth is, I didn't want to be a stranger. I wanted to be there for you, Jada, but I was too scared of how you would see me, of how you would feel. Jada turned to look at her, her eyes searching Diana's face for answers. What if I don't want to be part of your life? What if I can't forgive you for what you did? The question hit Diana like a ton of bricks, and for a moment, she didn't know how to answer. She had always been afraid of this moment, the moment where Jada might finally shut her out for good. But the one thing Diana had learned through this process was that she couldn't control how Jada felt, she could only be there and hope that, in time, the bond between them would grow stronger. I can't force you to forgive me, Diana said quietly. But I can promise you that I'll always be here, even if it takes time. I just hope that, in time, you'll be able to see that I'm trying. Jada didn't say anything for a while. The silence between them was thick, heavy with everything they had said and everything they hadn't. Finally, she nodded, though it was hesitant. I'll try. But it's gonna take time. Diana smiled softly. I'm not in a hurry. We've got time. As long as you're willing to try, that's all I need. The tension from their earlier conversation still lingered, but things had started to settle into a new rhythm. Diana was cautiously optimistic, but she knew the journey ahead would be long and filled with more challenges. She was ready to face them, but she also knew that there was something she hadn't yet shared with Jada, a truth that had been sitting in the back of her mind, waiting to be revealed. It came sooner than she expected. A knock at the door startled both women one late afternoon. Diana opened the door to find a familiar face from her past, someone she hadn't seen in years. Her mother. Mom. Diana said, her voice cold despite the shock. What are you doing here? Her mother's face was as stern and unforgiving as ever, her eyes hard with the kind of judgment Diana had spent her whole life trying to escape. I came to talk to you. I've heard about what you're doing with her. Her mother's gaze flicked toward Jada, who was standing behind Diana, looking confused. Mom, I told you I don't want to have this conversation with you. Not now. I don't care when, Diana, her mother snapped. This is getting out of hand. You've ruined your life once. Don't drag her down with you. Jada, who had been quiet up until this point, finally spoke up. What do you mean, drag me down? Her voice was sharp, defensive. I don't need you to tell me what's best for me. Diana's mother raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed. You think she'll be some sort of fairy tale, Diana? You think that after all these years, you can just waltz back in and play the role of the loving mother? She's a stranger to you, and to me. Jada looked between the two of them, a mixture of confusion and anger on her face. This is your mother, she asked, her voice cold. Diana could feel the walls of her carefully built world starting to crumble. She had expected resistance from her mother, but seeing Jada's face, her hurt and anger, made everything feel worse. She had hoped for a different kind of family reunion, one where everyone would be happy to heal. Instead, it felt like the past was pulling them backward. Her mother glanced at Jada one last time, the judgment clear in her eyes. You'll regret this, she said coldly before turning and walking out, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floors. Diana stood there, speechless, the weight of her mother's words pressing down on her. Jada didn't move at first, but Diana could feel the tension between them. The quiet after the storm was deafening. I'm sorry, Diana finally whispered. She's always been like that. Jada's voice was steady but filled with emotion. It's not you, Diana. It's her. I can see how much she means to you, but I don't think I'm ready to deal with that kind of judgment. Diana nodded, her heart heavy. I know. I don't expect you to. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Jada sighed, rubbing her temples. It's just a lot. And you're right, we've got time. But I need to be sure I'm doing this for me, and not because I'm trying to fix what she broke. Diana watched as Jada turned and walked out of the room, but this time, there was something different in her expression, something that gave Diana hope. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness, but it was understanding. The days that followed were tough, especially after the encounter with Diana's mother. It left both women shaken, but in a strange way, it also brought them closer. Diana realized how deeply ingrained her mother's opinion still was in her life, but Jada made it clear that the judgment of others didn't have to define their relationship. "I'm not going anywhere, Diana," Jada said one afternoon, a quiet strength in her voice. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know you're my mother. And I want to try. Even if it's hard." Diana reached across the table and took Jada's hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. "That's all I can ask for." For the first time in a long time, Diana felt like she was not only looking toward the future but stepping into it with someone who was willing to take the next step with her. They still had a long way to go. There would be more challenges, more awkward conversations, more difficult truths to face. But at that moment, Diana knew that as long as Jada was willing to take this journey with her, they had a chance to build something that was stronger than the past. And that was enough. It had been a few weeks since Diana and Jada had last spoken about the encounter with her mother. Despite the tension it had caused, Diana had hoped things might smooth over. But the reality was that silence had settled between them once again. They hadn't spoken much since that fateful day. Diana was doing everything she could to be patient and respectful of Jada's space, but it was clear that the walls Jada had built were still high. One afternoon, as Diana sat in her study, she found herself staring at the clock. The time seemed to drag on as she waited for any sign from Jada. It wasn't that Jada had completely shut her out, but there was something unspoken between them. Jada had withdrawn, slightly, but noticeably, and it hurt Diana in ways she couldn't explain. She wanted to fix things, to break the silence, but she wasn't sure how. Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Jada. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." Diana's heart skipped a beat, both relieved and anxious. She quickly responded. "I'm here. Whenever you're ready." The doorbell rang soon after, and Diana stood up, trying to steady her breathing. As she opened the door, Jada stood there, her face serious but not angry. "Hey," Jada said, her voice soft. "Can we sit?" Diana nodded, leading her to the living room. There was an intensity in Jada's posture that Diana couldn't ignore, but she held her tongue, waiting for Jada to speak first. "I've been thinking," Jada started, sitting down on the couch. "A lot. And there's something I need to say, something I've been avoiding." Diana felt a lump form in her throat. "What is it?" "I don't want to keep pretending like everything is okay," Jada continued, her eyes avoiding Diana's. "I want to, but I don't know how. There's a part of me that still doesn't trust you. I'm angry, and I'm confused. And sometimes I feel like I'm not ready for all of this." Diana's heart sank, but she didn't speak. She just nodded, letting Jada take her time. "I know it's not your fault that I don't know you. But I can't ignore the fact that you walked away from me. You left me. And I can't just forget that. I don't even know if I want to." Jada's voice cracked as she said those last words, and Diana felt the sting of each one. "I never meant to hurt you, Jada. Never. I get that this is hard for you," Diana said quietly. "I know I can't undo the past. But all I can do now is show up. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And I'll keep proving that to you, no matter how long it takes." Jada didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, the silence was deafening. Diana's heart was pounding in her chest, afraid that this could be the moment Jada walked out of her life again. But finally, Jada looked at her, her face softening. "I'm not sure what I want, Diana. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to feel. But I'll try. I'll try to trust you, to let you in, but it's going to take time. You have to give me that." Diana's breath released in a slow exhale. She nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I can give you time. I'll give you as much time as you need." Jada stood up, offering Diana a small, tentative smile. "I know you will. And I'm glad you're trying." With that, Jada left. She didn't slam the door behind her, but it felt like a door to something new had opened. It wasn't the big breakthrough Diana had hoped for, but it was progress, a start. It wasn't until a few days later that Diana began to understand the weight of what Jada had said. "I'll try. I'll try to trust you." Those words echoed in her mind. She wasn't angry, but Diana couldn't help but feel the deep ache of Jada's uncertainty. It wasn't that Jada didn't want to build a relationship, but it was that, for years, Diana had been absent. And trust, as Jada had so openly acknowledged, wasn't something that could be built overnight. The idea that she had to earn Jada's trust, their trust, was both humbling and heartbreaking. Diana couldn't blame Jada. She had always been the one in control, the one who had built her life with precision. Now, in the presence of her daughter, she realized that she couldn't control everything. There was no blueprint for this. There was no manual on how to fix the years they had lost. But Diana was determined to try. She called Jada the next day. "Hey, Jada," Diana said, her voice tentative but hopeful. "I've been thinking a lot. And I know I can't fix everything right away, but I'd like to spend some more time with you. Just us. No expectations. Just, you and me, getting to know each other. What do you think?" It took a long moment before Jada replied. But when she did, her voice was softer. "Yeah. I think that sounds nice." Over the next few weeks, Diana and Jada began to build a rhythm. It wasn't always easy, and there were days when the silence between them stretched too long. But there were also days when Jada would share small details about her life, things Diana had missed. The way she liked her coffee, the song that always made her laugh, the way she used to make up stories when she was a little girl. It was those small, unexpected moments that helped Diana feel like they were building something real. They started going to museums together, walking in the park, grabbing coffee at a local cafe. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't fast, but it was progress. Diana also began to understand the things she had taken for granted, how much time she had wasted, how much her absence had hurt Jada. There were moments when she wanted to apologize again, but she knew Jada wasn't ready for that. Instead, Diana focused on being present, listening when Jada spoke, and taking things one step at a time. One afternoon, as they sat together on a bench in Central Park, watching the world go by, Jada turned to Diana, her expression thoughtful. "You know," Jada said, "this is kind of nice. Just sitting here with you. I never thought I'd say that." Diana smiled, her heart swelling. "I'm glad. I want you to know that no matter what, I'm here." Jada nodded, her eyes focused on the ducks swimming in the pond ahead of them. "I know. And, maybe I can start believing that." It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness. But it was a step. A step towards something that neither of them had been ready to acknowledge before. It wasn't just about Diana being the mother Jada never had, it was about both of them learning to be part of each other's lives, in their own way, at their own pace. And that, Diana thought as they sat in comfortable silence, was enough, for now. As the weeks continued to pass, the bond between Diana and Jada slowly but surely deepened. They began to talk more openly about their hopes for the future, what they wanted from this relationship. They were still figuring things out, but there was no pressure. The connection they were forming felt fragile, but it also felt real. The past was something they could never change, but the future was something they could still shape. Diana continued to be patient, to show Jada that she could be trusted, that she was willing to earn her place in her life. And Jada, though guarded, was learning to trust her mother, one small moment at a time. As Diana walked through the park with Jada, feeling the cool breeze on her face, she realized that, while they might never be able to make up for the years they had lost, they were building something new. Something better. They didn't need to rush. They didn't need to have it all figured out. They just needed to keep walking, together. And for the first time in a long time, Diana believed that they might just make it. As the months continued to pass, Diana and Jada's relationship slowly began to take shape. They weren't rushing things anymore. It was clear that their bond was something neither of them had expected to happen, but both of them had started to embrace it in their own ways. Diana had always been a woman in control. She had built her life from the ground up, creating a world where she was the one who made the rules, who decided the course of events. But with Jada, she couldn't control anything. She couldn't change the past, and she couldn't rush the healing process. All she could do was show up, listen, and prove, every day, that she was here to stay. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt. There were still moments when Diana's heart would race at the thought of her past, when she wondered if Jada would ever truly forgive her. But those moments grew fewer and farther between. Diana had learned that forgiveness wasn't something you could ask for, it was something you had to earn, and she was willing to put in the work. But Jada, too, had her struggles. There were days when she would pull away again, retreat into herself, unsure of what to make of this newfound relationship. Diana could feel the tension in the air when Jada was distant, but she never pushed. Instead, she gave Jada the space she needed, knowing that time was the only thing that could heal the scars from the years they had lost. It was on one of those quiet afternoons in the park when Jada finally spoke up again, after a long period of reflection. Diana had been watching her, noticing how the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow over her face. It was in moments like these that Diana could truly see how much Jada had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. "I've been thinking," Jada said, her voice breaking the silence. "About everything. About you, about us." Diana turned her attention to her, giving her all the time she needed. "What are you thinking?" she asked gently. Jada paused, looking out over the pond, her hands resting in her lap. "I've always been afraid of. I don't know, being hurt again, I guess. You showed up when I least expected it. And I wasn't sure if I could let you in. But now." She sighed, turning toward Diana. "I want to try. I want to really try. And I think I can." Diana felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest, but she held it back, nodding slowly. "You don't have to rush anything. We're doing this together, at your pace." For a moment, neither of them said anything, simply sitting in the stillness. But the air between them felt lighter than it had in a long time. They didn't need to say everything all at once. The simple acknowledgement that they were both willing to move forward together was enough. The weeks that followed weren't without their challenges. There were still moments of hesitation, still moments where old habits crept in, like when Diana would try to overcompensate for the past, or when Jada would retreat into herself, unsure of how much to give. But both women were determined to build something new, something stronger. One evening, after a quiet dinner together at Diana's apartment, they found themselves sitting on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I've been thinking about how far we've come," Diana said softly, her voice almost wistful. "It hasn't been easy, has it?" Jada shook her head with a small smile. "No, not at all. But I think it's been worth it." Diana reached over, taking Jada's hand in hers. "I've spent so many years wondering if I'd ever have a chance to be the kind of mother I wanted to be. And I thought, for a long time, that I'd lost that opportunity. But I think maybe we can still make something of this. Together." Jada squeezed her hand. "I think we can, too. It's not going to be perfect, but nothing ever is." Diana smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. "No, nothing ever is. But we'll figure it out." The words didn't feel like a promise, they felt more like a commitment, an understanding between them. A commitment that they were both ready to face whatever came next, no matter how challenging it might be. Time continued to heal the rift between Diana and Jada, but healing wasn't a linear process. It didn't happen all at once. Sometimes it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And sometimes, it felt like they weren't getting anywhere at all. But those moments became less frequent as they found a rhythm that worked for them. Diana learned to stop overthinking every decision she made, and Jada began to accept the love Diana was offering without pushing it away. They had their disagreements, small ones, usually over things like boundaries or misunderstandings, but they were learning to navigate them with compassion and patience. One night, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Diana looked across at Jada, who was scrolling through her phone. She had been talking about her work at the shelter, and Diana had been listening intently, proud of how far Jada had come. "I've been thinking," Jada said suddenly, looking up. "Maybe I should try and reach out to the other kids at the shelter more. I don't know if I'm doing enough, you know. Maybe I'm not doing it the right way." Diana felt a sense of admiration for her daughter. "You're already doing so much, Jada. You've built something there. And they look up to you. You're helping them in ways that you might not even realize." Jada smiled faintly, but there was a hint of doubt in her eyes. "I guess I just don't want to let them down." Diana reached across the table, placing her hand gently over Jada's. "You won't. You've been through a lot, Jada. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not to me. Not to them. You're enough just as you are." Jada looked up, meeting Diana's eyes. For the first time, Diana saw the real weight of Jada's vulnerability, the fear of not being enough, the fear of failing. But there was something else there, too. Something strong. "I don't know if I believe that yet," Jada said quietly. "But maybe I'm starting to." The healing process wasn't just about repairing the bond between Diana and Jada, it was about both women learning to forgive themselves. Diana had spent years carrying the guilt of abandoning her daughter, and Jada had spent years wondering if she could ever trust anyone again. It wasn't something that could be fixed overnight, but each day was another chance to heal. As the months passed, both of them began to feel more at ease with each other. The awkward silences became fewer, replaced by more laughter, shared stories, and moments of real connection. They still didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, they were both hopeful about it. One evening, as they sat in the park, Jada leaned her head on Diana's shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but for Diana, it felt like everything. It was a sign that they were moving forward, together. "I'm glad we're doing this," Jada said softly. Diana smiled, her heart full. "Me too. And I'm not going anywhere, Jada. Not this time." As they sat together, the city light sparkling in the distance, Diana realized that while they might never be able to completely erase the past, they had built something beautiful from the pieces they had left. It was a fragile, imperfect thing, but it was theirs. And that was enough. In the end, Diana and Jada learned that family wasn't just about blood, it was about trust, patience, and the willingness to rebuild what was broken. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was a journey worth taking. Through the ups and downs, through the silences and the words that were left unspoken, they discovered that the most important thing was to show up for each other. And that, in the end, was the true meaning of family.